Municipal Advisory Council to order. The time is 6:02. And if we could have our secretary do roll.
Certainly. Councilmember Finley. Councilmember Lewis.
Here.
Councilmember Mayor.
Here.
Schbach is here. Councilmember Hess.
Here.
Councilmember Evans.
Here.
Councilmember Hayward.
Here.
And Councilmember Youngling.
Here.
We're all in attendance.
Great, thank you. All of you received the agenda. So if there are no changes, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted. Dave?
Can I make some changes? Recommend some adjustments? Sure. Largely, these are matters of timing, from the date the agenda was posted. There are a couple more items of correspondence, one from Don about the list of groups and organizations for inclusion in websites. This is the correspondence that went to all members as a query for input to Don and his work on the website. And another email from me having to do with Mendocino County Local Road Safety and Action Plan update. This is a follow-up on previous correspondence. I believe all members have that information. We'll talk about it a little bit later in the agenda. Also, some adjustments in the public agency referrals. The addition of a CDP 2023-0041 by David and Mary Ashukian. This came in on the 16th of April. So the action item is for somebody to volunteer to take it up. And also I've added and will add in the final published agenda site addresses. This is some feedback that I got from a member of the community who asked that each of these referral summaries help people understand where the proposals are located. And that's it.
Okay, what was that CDP? That we
CDP 2023-0041 by David and Mary Ashukian.
I just noticed it, but shouldn't we add, or we have the third and fourth correspondence item, Bauer Park survey responses? Is that what that is?
I assume it's just the subject of the email that I sent.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just, so it doesn't cause confusion, because we have Bauer Park later on when Kevin has his correspondence item there, right?
The format that I used, council member, is that the name of the person sending the item.
Okay.
And then in italics, the title, which is not an unusual format for bibliographical purposes, and then the date of transmittal. Some of these are multiple correspondence on a similar topic, and so subsequent items on the same topic usually have a regarding or some other additional title element. Did I miss anything?
No.
Yeah, that was the subject of my email.
Bauer
Which is
Park,
Bauer
that's what I
survey
thought.
responses, so
Okay,
I think it's correctly represented here.
okay.
But perhaps I'll be more specific in the future.
Are there any other amendments or changes? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve as amended.
Move to approve.
Moved by Councilmember Lewis. I'll second. Second by Councilmember Hess. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, all of you should have received the April 4th minutes. It's open for discussion and or action. Okay, hearing nothing, do we have a motion to approve?
I will move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Mayor. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Youngling. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, we have the correspondence. As submitted. Any questions? None? Okay, we will move on. Okay, public comment on non-agenda items. A maximum of 3 minutes is reserved for members of the public to address the Walla Municipal Advisory Council on items not listed on the agenda. And the total time for public input on a particular issue is limited to 20 minutes. The council is prohibited from discussing or acting on matters not on the agenda, but may briefly respond or ask a question for clarification. Is there anybody in the public that is or would like to speak on a non-agenda item? Okay, seeing none. Okay, item number 6, the Mendocino County Sheriff and Code Enforcement Report. Sheriff, you're on.
Thank you. I had to get again to give the stats, and I just wanted to go over a couple of things that I'm working on for the county. She wanted on.
Yeah, that'd be
All
great.
right.
Well, good evening, everybody. So for the last 30 days, it seems like we're still on the same trend. We got a total calls for service of the Southern Coastal communities coming in at around 23 calls for service. 16 of those were in the Point Arena area and 7 in the Walla area. And Point Arena, those calls included welfare checks, some road hazards, traffic stops, some follow-up investigations, civil services, a couple trespassing calls and some extra patrols. And Walla, we had 1 911 hang up, a couple welfare checks, some civil issues, did some more civil services and extra patrols. Through the last 30 days, there was 2 arrests made in the Southern Coastal communities, 1 for criminal threats out of Walla, and then warrant arrest over in the Arena. Total 5 reports were taken. The breakdown for that was a violation of court order, criminal threats, assault with a deadly weapon, a warrant arrest, and a check fraud case. It's still currently being investigated as well.
Any questions for our deputy?
What was the deadly weapon, if you don't mind me asking? Or if you have that there?
I don't know if the sheriff.
Yeah, that case has been filed, and we can talk about it.
Yeah, so everyone's been interviewed. It was a assault deadly weapon over on Main Street in Point Arena about a week and a half ago. Everyone's being filed again with the district attorney's office, and we're gonna let them make a decision. Everyone's been identified in the incident that it occurred. It occurred in the evening hours on a Saturday, I believe, if I recall correctly. So, but everyone's okay and has received medical attention that they needed to, and we're gonna be going through with the court proceedings, and we'll hopefully have some more answers soon.
Thank you.
And there were factors in aggravation and mitigation on that. Currently the case has been filed by the district attorney's office. So step up here so we can get, the recording. We've got the things that the sheriff's office is working on. We've got the behavioral health wing of the jail started. We've got almost all of the dirt work in the conduits, the electrical, water, sewer, all of that's being done currently. And then I would expect sometime in the next 3 weeks that we'll see the slab done, and then of course from the foundations they'll work up. One of the things that I'm currently working on with a couple of other sheriffs, I sit on a panel with state sheriffs, myself and Sheriff Consul out of Humboldt County, regarding Native American liaisons. Okay? Growing up in Round Valley, I know everybody in the Native community up there, and I have roughly quarterly biannual meetings with all our tribal leaders. One of the things I wanted to talk about tonight was Assembly Bill 2138. James Ramos is an assemblyman down in San Bernardino County. He is a member of the Serrano tribe. And I believe that's actually mostly in San Bernardino County, but I think it also kind of bleeds over into possibly San Diego County. Senator Ramos is bringing forth some legislation for tribal communities that almost all of the sheriffs in the state are for right now. What they're asking is that tribal law enforcement be recognized as state peace officers, as long as they have the same training, same rules, same everything else. And we're at a time right now in the state of California where we've got a lot of tribal communities who have got tribal police officers who don't have the exact same powers as a deputy sheriff. We're just trying to bring that together to bring all of us up to the same training, and expectations. And I think that it's gonna be a good thing. We're at a point in the state where the state has been talking a lot about tribal sovereignty. And they are a sovereign nation, they truly are, but I don't know of any sovereign nations that don't have a police force, so why are they not allowed to have? And so we're working on that right now, and also, we're in a time right now where the tribes and myself, we need more help, not more work, and so we can partner up on a lot of things. As we have in Round Valley, a lot of the tribal policemen over the years have gone to work for me. And it's kind of a natural progression for them. However, if they have the exact same structure that we have, why would they need to go to work for me? They could have a job that would last them 25, 30 years, and they would also train the people coming up behind them, and we could work as peers and partners. And so I've been really behind that legislation, and I've been pushing it out and speaking with Assemblyman Ramos on it. I think it'll be a good thing for our county. Couple of other things. We are low on numbers still, but our numbers are coming up, and they're coming up well. And we're hiring the right people right now. I think that we've got some folks who've got their hearts and their minds in the right place. And I'm hopeful that sometime around August or September, we'll be seeing the fruits of our labors with this big hiring push that we're pushing forward right now. Currently, we're putting out some advertisements and whatnot. And, you know, anybody who's interested, we're going to be hiring. We've got a couple of dispatch positions open. We've got to hire a few more people for county jail because that new wing is opening up. And so that's going to cause some openings there. And then we need about 14 deputy sheriffs. And so I'm keeping my fingers crossed with all of the applications that we've gotten. We're going to get some really good folks in. And I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has for me. Go ahead.
Yeah. Quick question. I think it's again, I also support the notion that tribal police be recognized as local law enforcement. But you bring up an interesting point, which is equivalent training. Would this mean, does the legislation require that tribal police go through post or a certified equivalent program?
Yes.
Great.
It's going to require that they go through post, a standard police academy, that they have the exact same background requirements, and that their backgrounds and their training be audited by post in the exact same fashion that mine do. And, you know, they've done some select law enforcement officer things for them to be able to enforce federal crimes on the reservations. That's that special law enforcement certification through the federal government. However, they don't get to book someone into my jail on a federal crime. They've got to take them to San Francisco. That is not fair to those folks when there's one or two guys working and now all of a sudden they're hung up on a transport to San Francisco for your pickup. It's not working the way that it's kind of been set up. And the other thing is, when Public Law 280 was pushed into place in the 1950s and some of it into the 60s, it did not take into account that tribal communities would grow. And there's a lot more housing in Round Valley than what there ever was when I was a kid. The tribe up there has the Big Bend Ranch, which is, I believe they've got roughly 36,000 acres in the Round Valley area, and almost nobody to police it. And, you know, that's where things begin to go off the rails, is because they've got too much work for the people they have. They got too much work for the people I have. But between all of us coming together with a good agreement, I think that we'll be able to get things under control.
I have one more question.
Sure.
The presently local law enforcement is under oversight by the California Department of Justice. Would that, or the Attorney General's office, would tribal police services also be overseen under certain necessary circumstances by the Attorney General's office?
Yes, and local law enforcement throughout the state of California, we answer to and are investigated by the district attorney's office, the grand jury, and the Department of Justice or the AG's office, the same thing. One of the things that I have had to speak about as I come to the table, and they've invited me to the table, so because myself and Shannon Dygas, the sheriff of San Bernardino County, Billy Hansel, the sheriff of Humboldt County, we have the most tribal nations in our jurisdiction. And I've explained to them that the sheriff's office does not want to police tribal police. If you're going to make a complaint about a police officer, don't take it to me, take it to the Attorney General's office. That's where it belongs, that's where it should be, or to the district attorney's office. If it's a local issue, if it's a state issue, it's the AG's office.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan.
Yeah, where are you losing folks to?
Sonoma County.
Better pay and More budget?
You go across that bridge down there, and I can guarantee you about a 30% pay increase.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and it's just. Mendocino County no longer has the same. Budget that we had years ago, because not a lot has changed here. As a matter of fact, I was just driving through Willis the other day, looking at all of the industry that is no longer there. We no longer have industry like we used to have. When I was a young fella in Covelo, you know, if you were 17, you could quit 3 jobs in a week and pick up number 4 by Monday. And it just doesn't seem to be that way. A lot of it is regulations in the state of California. That is the absolute truth. A lot of it is, you know, sometimes we get into this issue where I think the government is always trying to do the right thing. However, we need to really look at, are we being helpful or are we being a hindrance? And I recently read a study about they were trying to put a bathroom in San Francisco. Have you guys read about that? The public restroom in San Francisco?
Yeah,
Oh my goodness. I mean, my head almost blew up. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. It costs this much money to put in a public restroom?
it's like $1.7 million, I think.
No. 1.7 was almost all the fees. The
Oh.
fees to the permit process. The bathroom itself, if the government would have done it, it would have been like a $3 or $4 million bathroom. Private industry wanted to come in and do it because, you know, they can do it for much less. And, they found out just the fees were like 1.3 or 1.7. It's been a long time since I read it, but it was this massive number.
Yeah.
And so when we look at what core government function is, I think that we have moved in the right direction on a lot of things in the state of California. People that I know, relatives of mine who are from the Los Angeles area, 20 years ago, you couldn't see the hills. Now you can drive down there and you can see the hills because the smog and the baloney has been cleaned up. Okay, and I understand that, and I think that is a good thing. But at some point in time, there has got to be a balance between industry and environment. It can't be 100% one and not the other, because we saw that in the past. And it can't be lopsided in the other direction as well. People have still got to be able to earn a living and get to work. So, but a million years ago, I had a professor when I was attending junior college, trying to get some discount knowledge. He was a good guy too, and he said he was a brilliant man, but what he was telling everybody in the class at that point was, sometimes we will make decisions that are the right thing in that moment, and once it gets codified, you know, it takes that act of Congress when the moment changes to change it back. And so that's why we've all got to kind of stay engaged and look at the problems from both sides. And you know, we see a lot going on right now that kind of takes me back to a quote that I heard years ago. I can't remember who said this quote, but it is very, very hard to think about the problems. And that's why a lot of people just want to sit back and judge. And so are we going to think about the problems? Or are we going to just stand back and judge and cause division? No, let's all come together and let's think about it. Let's see what works for individual communities. I can tell you that the needs just in our county completely different on the South Coast than what they are in Round Valley. Completely different in Laytonville than what they are in Hockland. 2 towns of similar size, completely different. So, and I think that we've all got to kind of come together and have these small meetings and figure out what affects each community and deal with that on the micro, and then look at how it affects the macro as well. So, anything else for me? I'll give you 3 guesses where I ordered supper tonight.
No,
Very round. And they said it would be done at 6:30.
oh, there you go.
Thanks for
Thank
joining
you,
us.
Sheriff.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Deputy. Oh, you got a question?
No,
Oh.
but I would like to ask the person who's calling in on the phone to identify themselves, please.
See you guys.
Thank you, Mike.
You guys take
Thank you,
care.
guys.
Later, you have a good evening.
Maybe they're not listening right now.
Okay, well, we'll catch.
Okay.
Okay, item number 7 is our public agency referrals, discussion and action on our CDPs. Item 7.1 is Redwood Coast Medical Services applicant request, coastal development use permit modification of coastal development permit viewed at 2019-007. Councilmember Lewis and Councilmember Spock were the council members assigned to that, if I'm not mistaken, so take it away.
You want to go? Okay, thank you, Chairman. This is an application, which essentially is the same project that members of the Redwood Coast Medical Services came to GMAC and gave a presentation to us several months back. It's the same project, but as they anticipated then, this is now going through the regulatory process, and we received this referral for site review. And I'd like to defer to the applicant to make some kind of preface and overview remarks before offering some further discussion about our review. Would that be acceptable?
Absolutely.
Jim or Ara, would you like to, we have to ask you to come up to the microphone over there, or?
If, do you wanna, do your presentation near slides or?
I will do that, but can you?
Because we could probably take that microphone there. Might, that should be the way out there.
If you want to hold it, you can probably just take it in hand.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank Council Member David Swag and Dan Lewis for coming to the facility, sat down with us and went over the actual location. And we had a very meaningful discussion, and the perspectives and the guidance they shared. We incorporated those in our thinking. So thank you for coming in. The presentation that we have that, Jim and I will do is, you guys have seen it once before, most of it, but maybe we go over one more time so you can see it. So can we go to the next page? So current condition, the building that across the street here was built in 1984. So that's what, almost 40 years now. Many modifications have been done over the years, but it was never necessarily built for a healthcare facility of today. When it was built, more of an office building, and maybe those days, healthcare providing entities could have used that, and we're still using it. So the building is not suitable for longer term healthcare providing entity in any community, and particularly here, where we are the only healthcare providing entity. So we have to have an urgent care or emergency, a significant lab, a full body radiology department, mental health, as well as the primary care. And as the technology and the service delivery of healthcare is changing, we need to have new process, procedure, tools, and technology. So it's not possible to do that in the building. Not only it doesn't meet some of the basic functional requirements for flow, patient flow, provider flow, but also it's out of space. It's not sufficient to enough space there to do all the right things we need to do. So there was some original plan, what about 8-9 years back was put together to create a completely new building up here. And once that process went through a little bit, it was realized that cost of that will be about $25 million. That's probably is undoable in our community to raise that kind of funds and do it. And also it never went through the appropriate county approval process, all the analysis that needed to be done, et cetera, et cetera. Whether that was buildable in the location, it was thought of, we don't know. But just the bottom line pricing was so much that it was shelved. And so we'll continue to use the current building. Well, the time has come that we need to address it. This building is not sustainable for providing healthcare of tomorrow in this community, where we are the only healthcare providing entity next 5, 10 years down the line. So that's the whole genesis of the discussion, what we needed to do. If you can go to the next slide. So the proposed addition is on the west side of the existing building. And before I go into that, we did an analysis of all 4 sides of our existing building, the property we own, RCMS, where it is buildable. The east side has the most space. North side also has quite a bit of space. South and west was little or limited. East side, we could not. The biodiversity, the Corps of Engineers requirements, because of native plants, water, etc., etc. So they came and said there is nothing can be built there. On the north side, we could, but then we have the heliport or the helipad, and that there are some restrictions because of that, how far we can go in because you have to maintain heights and etc. On the south side, the slope is such that it requires a lot more work to build anything there and not big enough space. So net, after all the engineering, civil engineering, structural engineering, engineering analysis that was done, so west side, so to be the most appropriate, although we couldn't build a huge building there, but we could build something there that will address all the requirements and the analysis that was done. So that's where we are trying to build. It's a 2-floor, about total somewhere between 5,500 to 5,500. But 2,500 of that is in the second floor, and in the first floor or the ground floor is another 2,000 or so. So the initial plan is to build that upper floor as a clinic space and keep the bottom floor as a shell space at this time. And maybe over a period of time, we can build on that. So the upper floor is about 2,500, 2,400 is the shell space. And we're also, as we're doing this, because of the issues of the way our the ambulance flows, I mean, not just the patient, but the ambulance coming and going. The way we have the driveway now, you go up and turn around and drop off your patients in the urgent care door or on the urgent care door and come out. But because of that, everything else has to be parked in this upper parking lot, including sometimes patients who cannot park their car over there because we need to keep that space available for the ambulances. So the difficulty is that sometimes patients have to come here and then drop them off and then they walk down. So the thought is that as we're doing this, why don't we connect that roadway around the building directly with the parking lot? So we'll build a ramp there so you can come through the way you entered the facility now, drop your patient off, and then you can go up straight to the park there. You don't have to park there first and come down. And also add a walking ramp that ADA compliant so people can walk through that. So that's part of the overall design as well. So it's in like a couple of phases. We would like to do the parking lot first and then do the building. One of the challenge of doing this is a operating clinic. While we're doing any modification or any changes, we still have to operate the clinic. We cannot shut it down, go somewhere else, come back after 6 months when the building is ready. And that provides some significant challenge, that how we do it in piecemeal, in phases. And that's the engineering construction discussions that we're having. But the first phase is the ramp, and then we will do the buildings. You can go to the next slide. So once we finish that upper floor, the clinic side, we are expecting to have about 50% more clinical space, including lab space. And I just want to make one comment about our lab. There are generally 3 grades of labs in a health center. A hospital grade lab that you find in the hospital, and a mid-tier lab that is not quite the hospital grade, but field hospitals have that generally. And then a small clinic-based lab. These are the federal qualities of lab gradification. And you also have a lab you find in doctor's office that is not qualified by the, or approved by the federal government. Our lab is the middle tier. So not a hospital grade lab, but is significantly more complex than you'll find in a regular clinic. The reason for that we provide clinical care here that is in par with an emergency room, because we can receive ambulances and provide, life-threatening emergency trauma care if need be. So our lab has to have the ability to do all kinds of tests so the providers can decide right then and there. The space we have there to do all the lab work, all the machines that we need, is not appropriate at this time. Actually, the same area where we're running the machines, we're drawing the blood at the same place. And these are not the right environment. So we need to increase the lab. Also, there are a number of other things that we have to do is that our primary care patient visit rooms, we need to have more of them. We need to have more space in our urgent care or our emergency care. So anyway, bottom line is that we will get about 50% more space in the clinical floor to do all those right things. We are also putting in the telemedicine and behavioral health / mental health space in that. Right now, we can't do all of it there. We, all around the place we move our telemedicine. So we want to have dedicated telemedicine space with appropriate equipment, TV screens, etc. So providers can sit there and patient can call in, or a patient who does not have the ability to do the call-in from their home, they can come in to our facility and have appropriate connection to a specialist that we refer to, that maybe in Santa Rosa or somewhere else. So those are needed improvements we need to do. We're doing that. We're also putting together primary care nursing hub. One of the issue we have right now is our nurse and MA, the medical assistant hub, is right next to the entrance or the front desk. And the providers are seeing the patients farther away on the other end of the building sometimes. Ideally, a medical facility should have nurses hub and MA's hub around where the physicians are seeing the patients. So they can see, they can interact if need be, the provider can call. So we're trying to create a separate second hub for the newer side of the building, and around which will be new provider rooms. One problem we have, our providers always complain, because we have a provider hub. Instead of provider offices, we have 5, 6 providers, depending on the day, sitting in one big room. And if they want to have a phone conversation with their patient, or they want to have a private conversation, there is no privacy. So we're trying to create some space that the provider can have one-on-one conversation without taking up a patient care room. So office space. And these are all standard, normal, today's medical facilities have. Not a private doctor's office, but a clinic of our size, or a field hospital, or a major hospital. So they have all those facilities. We're trying to get up as much as we can. We don't have any conference room in this building. That's a sad state. We have like one conference room that 5 people can sit, or 6 people, and then everybody can hear around that room what they're talking about. So we want trying to get a conference room or classroom that can sit about 8 to and all the people, and also we're trying to design it in such a way that it is there is a door in between the conference room and where, as you walk in on the new facility, the reception area, and we can make all that into a bigger conference room if you open up that door, particularly after hours or something when no one is coming in and we want to have a meeting, or the community wants to have a meeting that can sit about 20 or so people. So we're looking at those possibilities. We are adding a couple of ADA accessible toilets right now. I mean, that building has one toilet downstairs and 2 toilets upstairs. And we have some 35 to 40 employees at any one time, and up to 15, 16 patients. And that it's almost impossible to operate. So we have to sometimes queue up and who's going on to toilet when kind of way. So we're trying to address those. And of course, as part of the expansion, we are looking at the code requirements for number of parkings. So we may have to add some parkings. So as part of this plan, we're putting together some additional parking. And as part of that, and it's not necessarily connected, but I thought I will mention that we have applied to PG&E for a couple of charging stations as we modify the parking. Now, whether that'll happen or not, we don't know, but we're trying to do. So we can go to the next slide. So these are the impacts. You know, we are doing enough analysis, make sure that all the impacts, environmental impacts, water, sewage, etc., is minimized. So you'll see that one of the bullet at the bottom is the building design is equivalent to LEED Silver status. I don't know if you're familiar with LEED. You know, it's a leadership in engineering and environmental design, and that's the latest guidelines for green building that takes into considerations the facility, the location, the inside of the building, the impact on the biodiversity, water, sewage, all that. So the base of the LEED program is the LEED certification, and ours is going up one more level to LEED Silver certification. So it is significantly green building, if that's the definition of it. But idea here is to have the least amount of impact in our community, least amount of carbon footprint, etc. And there are some plans that if we build it like this, we can continue to do other things down the line, like solar power, etc. Not all of it in the current phase, but we're looking into those provisions. So I think the idea here, maybe the first bullet is important. We're not necessarily looking for serving more patients. That's not necessarily in the plan here. The demographic is not changing here. It's the same 10,000 people that we serve, 5,000 named patients we have. It's not significantly going to increase. Not suddenly another 10,000 people will be moving in here. But we'll be able to serve those people in a way that is needed to serve clinically and medically 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line. That's the idea here. Water conserving fixtures, so that we did the analysis in the study and we will not use any more water. Part of it is because the number of people are not going to be anymore. So we will change, like, although we are adding additional toilets, but we will change all the fixtures, so water saving fixtures, so the total outflow and inflow is going to be no more than what we have today. All the environmental impacts, we have done all the analysis, and I think Dave and Dan has suggested we do some more looking into that. So thank you very much for pointing those out. We will do that. I talked enough on the LEED Silver status, and we also looking at, and thank you, Dave, for pointing that out, the surface runoff. because the hills are on this side and the water flows down, and if we have the way, if we design it in a way that all the water is flowing over the, paved road or the concrete, and it'll all go into the roadway and onto the, wherever it goes from there. So the idea here is to have those flow go over the ground area on the south side where we have plants and everything. So most of it can, or some of it can get absorbed. So that's the idea. I think that's the next slide. But I think I'll give it to. So these are some of the drawings.
Thank you, Rob. Actually, Art, most of the things, so I'll just take a little bit of time to kind of explain the site. This is the existing building right here. And the driveway currently comes
Excuse me,
down.
sir.
Yeah.
Watch out for the cord. You might want to take a little bit. Otherwise, you might pull out the socket here.
Yeah, okay.
Also, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Jim Nybach, and I'm on the RCMS board and helping with this project as a member of the facilities committee. So in any event, the existing driveway goes up here and goes around the building and then comes back down on this side to get back to Ocean Drive. And there's a driveway through here in front of the lower administrative offices section. But, and this is currently landscape land. So the building addition would fit into this area right here. As Ara said, on 2 levels. Top level would connect directly with the existing clinic on the upper floor. And then the bottom level would connect with the administrative offices down below. There's a little bit of a, we'll have to deal with some site elevation issues to make that happen, but it can work. But all in all, I mean, doing an addition to a building is much more efficient way of getting the space that we need than trying to build some new facility someplace else. And this is the ramp that goes up to the existing parking lot. And gee, it's not a very good picture, but there's accessible parking here. There's some landscaping, and then there's an ADA accessible ramp that makes its way down to the clinic area. The entry to the clinic will change a little bit. Urgent care will still be over in this area. The primary care will be accessible here. And maybe that's enough to show. Well, let me just say, we contracted with Wind Coastal Planning at the advice of the county planning to take a look at the what kind of issues we might have in terms of environmental issues. And as Ara said, this area over here to the east of the building is probably would have been the best place to go, but it's a wetlands. And the analysis that Wind did showed that. We also asked them to look at all the other possibilities, north, south, and west, to determine where we were best likely to go. And their conclusion was that this western side was the least environmentally impacting. So that's essentially how we ended up with that space. But we could go on to the next slide. Oh, before you go, let me just say one other thing. This is the parking here, and we can get approximately the same number of spaces that we have. If we need to add additional parking, there's a possibility of doing that up in this area, but that could be added, and we would intend to do that if we had to do it in a permeable surface. So we wouldn't be adding additional hardscape for that. So, okay, we can go on to the next slide then. So this is actually more of the same, probably a little less cluttered up with lines, but there's the ADA parking down here. There's an ADA ramp that goes to the lower level so that if that shell space gets built out, and one of the possible uses for that is a larger conference room, so that we would have the way for people to get to that on an ADA accessible ramp. And here, this shows a little better the ADA ramp here, some landscaping. So we can go on to the next slide. And this is the lower level. This would be the shell space. Possibility of additional toilets here. This is a probable location for a larger conference room here. But otherwise, it could be used for other kinds of storage or back office support things. Next slide. And this shows the layout of the upper floor, and this is phase 2, phase 1 being the ramp, the scope of work. And you see there is some overlap of the work between the old and the new building to make everything work and flow together. But as Ara said, there's a dramatic increase in the number of clinical exam spaces with this addition. This is the conference room, a small conference room here. And as Ara mentioned, the idea would be that these doors could open up and then we could have spillover crowds that would fill this waiting area here now, where people during the day would use it for reception. But if it's a night meeting, for example, you might want to open it up and get more room for, you could probably get 20 people or more in there. And then the next, down here is the lab. But we can go to the next slide. And just so you get an idea about what the addition looks like, this is the existing building here, painted red. I like that. And this is the addition here, 2 floors. And up here, there's room for a lot of the mechanical equipment. And there are plans to put in things like heat pumps. Solar panels would go here on the existing building. All the windows and doors and everything are at such a standard that it meets that LEED equivalency in terms of Title 24 requirements of the state. So this is from the south. This is from the north, which you wouldn't see unless you were up on the helipad. And we can go to the next page. And then this is the ramp coming up. So, and the ADA ramp. So if you were coming down, this is what you would see. And then this then would be the entry to the clinic, the new clinic space right here. This is the reception area back in this area, covered area, so that people would have some protection from the elements as they're coming into the clinic. And this is from the southwest. I think it's a nice, my own personal opinion, I think it's a nice design. It's not exactly like the old building, but that's all right. You know, the old building is not that attractive. But, you know, by dressing that up a little bit and adding, you know, a structure that will be visible. I mean, this will be what people see as they come up Ocean Drive. And so I think it's a lot better kind of approach to the building than what we have right now. And then we could go to the next slide. So we're currently working with Mendocino County Planning. They have gotten our application, of course, and you got the notice of it. The notice went out to, I don't know, 20, 25 different public entities that have potential issues or could have. And frankly, you're the only organization that we've heard from to date. So good for you. Anyway, we're expecting to hear from county planning next week as to what other applications or what other requests for information might have been received, so we can deal with those, because that all has to be dealt with before you get through the planning process and get to a public hearing kind of space. Notices have also gone out to any property owners within 300 feet of the property line. And the coastal development use permit, it's being handled without a new CDP. It's an amendment of an existing CDP that was done in connection with the heliport, which will save us a lot of time, I think. So there will be a public hearing with the Planning Commission sometime later this year. We have assembled our architecture and engineering team. We have the architect who's been working on developing plans to this date. It's called a design partnership, and a local architect who's part of that group, Fumiko Docker, you may know her, Fumi Docker. But in addition to that, we have engineers lined up. We have a soils engineer, who actually did a study of the site almost 20 years ago, but they're going to do an update of that by drilling some boring holes in the actual location of the building. And they'll update their plan. We have a civil engineer who will be looking at all of the issues in terms of designing the ramp, whatever it needs to be done underneath the addition, but also we're looking at things like the runoff and how to capture that and meet the requirements there. We have mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers lined up. Did I say structural? We have a structural engineer who will get to work after we have the results from the soils engineers' borings so that they know how to design the foundations for the building. And lastly, we have a landscape architect who will contribute once we get the building underway so that we know we want to have a good looking project, not just in terms of building, but also the landscape. So that team is about to begin work on design development. And then we expect within 3 months, they'll be able to start work on the construction documentation. So we're moving right along. And of course, we're working on our capital campaign. Got to get those dollars lined up. We've got some success at that rate, but we need to do more. So that's where we are. So we look forward to any questions that you might have, and we certainly look forward to your support of the project.
Melissa?
I was wondering if in pursuit of the LEED solar certification, you will be ensuring that the material used inside the building will be non-toxic so that there won't be any off-gas.
Yeah, I think that's part of the whole LEED. And just to be clear, we're not seeking the formal certification as a LEED building, but we're going to follow all the equivalent requirements of LEED certification because it's a very expensive process to go through that actual certification. But our commitment is that we will follow all of the LEED requirements.
It's not certified, but it could be gold standard.
Well, that's good on you. Yeah. Well, no, it's important. I mean, you need to pay attention to things like, do you have furniture that's off-gassing, or do you have, other things going on inside the building that will affect not only, in this case, the people who work there, but also the patients. So we need to be careful that that's addressed in an appropriate manner. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Any other questions from council?
Yeah.
Don?
Yeah, you mentioned that you were gonna talk to PG about potentially getting some EV charging.
Yes.
So I think that'd be a great idea. However, PG is not the only entity that you need to be dealing with. The California Energy Commission, has programs for grant money available to community organizations, and there's one particular grant program called Community in Charge, which helps, local groups, community-oriented type groups, and I suspect you qualify, but I'm not 100% sure. We're going to have a seminar, webinar a week ago, and then we canceled it, so it'll be rescheduled. But I'm going to attend that. Any useful information that I find from that, I will let you know, because that would be upfront grant money that you could apply for. That would perhaps pay for a majority of the installation cost of some of the charging. That would be level 2. With the volume you need there.
But yeah,
You don't want anything else that's going to be way too expensive. So you want level 2 charging, which is appropriate for the facility that you have. Your employees or visitors who come, they might want to plug in. Employees might want to plug in for several hours. A visitor needs just an hour or two to get a bit of a charge, so you can make it at home, whatever. But that's totally appropriate for your purpose.
so thank you. Yeah, let me know. And actually, the application we have put it in with PG&E is for level 2 only. They actually came and did the survey. They already did the survey. They looked at the.
Okay, so they get
outlets.
audition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
What's the plan for backup power? Do you have
Yeah.
Get the battery pack to go with the
So-
panels.
The initial plan is to have the generator and maybe upgrade the generator so it
Yeah.
can provide, so it's a dual fuel, gas propane generator. Over a period of time, our intention is that battery pack, Tesla Powerwall, along with the solar panel, but I think down the line, we are looking at those.
And it's really important because, when you're in essential service and we lose power for 2 weeks, you can't rely on just one generator, you have to shut off and maintenance it, you have to have more than one power backup. I'm sure you-
So just to answer your question, we are working with the state on this, unrelated to this project, on microgrid,
Mhm.
self-serving microgrid. And that's something that is a separate project, but obviously, it's part of the overall survivability of RCMS in case of emergency. So, exactly. So that process has started. I have already met with the state folks on that, and so we'll see where we go with that.
So I agree.
Robert?
Yeah, you were mentioning earlier that you were not anticipating any increased water usage. I wouldn't suspect you were gonna have these increased septic needs either. Because you're not gonna be that many more people coming to the facility or not any more employees. I'm just wondering, where is the interceptor tank, sewer tank located? Is it on the south of the building? So the area where you put in the addition, there's nothing interfering with any utility interfering with your addition there. That we think we can connection easily from the addition to the existing. It captures the septic tanks and then it goes off to. Yeah, to the plant. Yeah, we already talked to the manager. Great.
Henry?
I mean, this seems like a great, well thought through, extremely valuable project. I wonder if you've run into any opposition, or are people pretty much just, this is great. Get to
So
it.
far, everybody I spoken to, they're supporting it, so I have
Yeah.
not heard from anybody. I mean, it's for the community. It's
Yeah,
not a
yeah,
private
yeah.
business. It's not for profit. It's not somebody's house. It is for all of us. So.
Glad to hear it.
Dan?
We already had our discussions.
We're prepared to
Well, we'll go to public comment, but I want to make sure that the council's finished their questions.
I don't have any.
Any public comment on this item? Did they want to? No hand up?
No, nothing on Zoom.
Okay, seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment and return it back to the council for deliberation and action.
As Laura and Jim mentioned, they invited Dan and I to come for a walk. We had a good, very helpful discussion and a very informative stroll on the site. And I prepared a set of slides just to move us through that information for the benefit of the council, and then our recommendations on commentary. There you go. That one right there. Yeah. I'm gonna move through slides we've already talked about, just in the interest of timing. We can go to the next slide. This is a background slide.
I gotta share
Oh,
screen.
okay, good. Okay, so again, this is backgrounds discussion. As Jim mentioned, this is a modification of an existing coastal development use permit for the helipad. And we've already heard from our engineer about essentially the site constructed proposal. Go ahead. Yes, that's just an aerial view. Of the 10 acres owned by RCMS at this location, the project affects about 2.2 acres. It's in general plan and zoning district called Malala Plan Development and Malala Village Mixed Use. The zoning and GP designations split the project area, and that turns out to be a bit of a problem. Talk about that toward the end of the show. We're close to State Route 1, but outside of the scenic corridor. This facility is not visible from the scenic corridor. It's a relatively low elevation, but it is upslope. So as mentioned earlier, runoff from the property does head downhill. The project site is fairly gently sloped, but again, slope is an issue for development. Jim mentioned that there's wetland adjacent to the development on the east side, and then on the west side, just off site, is a Grandford Bishop pine forest with some other vegetation there. Next slide, please. So we, Dan and I took a look at the referral packet, included some technical documents, including design plans, a biological resources survey, scoping survey conducted by WIN, as well as Mendocino County Planning Commission related to the previous use permit. I want to emphasize that the WIN coastal planning document was a scoping survey that was done as part of RCMS's diligence in determining how to approach the project design. Next slide, please. I think we're going to move through these slides. These are essentially recaps of what Jim presented. So this is a plot plan. We're going to move fairly quickly. If there are any questions that are triggered by these views, just let me know. Next slide, please. This particular one does show the an additional new parking area up in the top right portion of the view. This is an area that's already pretty flat. There is some vegetation on it. There's a little gazebo over there and some storage structures that are presently on the ground. Next slide, please. Phase 1, as previously mentioned, is the updated connection between the clinic access and the upper parking lot that will include an ADA accessible ramp that connect those two areas. Next slide, please. Phase 2 plan at ground level, essentially limited to the existing developed areas. The western side landscaping adjacent to the structure would be utilized for the new structure itself. Next slide. This is the footprint for the upper level, and the difference in articulation here is just talking about the fact that the project will have two ADA accessible parking areas in the lower deck and two on the upper deck, immediately accessible to building access points. Next slide, please. So lots of words, but this is again right out of the WIN coastal scoping survey. They looked at a study area within 100 feet of the existing structures. There were a list of 19 recommended measures to avoid impacts, measure to minimize impacts, and a measure to compensate for impacts. But I want to emphasize for council members that this was based on the 100-foot radius around the existing developed area, not the exact project, which was designed to respond to recommendations that were developed by the scoping survey. Next slide, please. Based on our review, Dan and I came to the conclusion that what is being proposed is the least environmentally damaging practicable alternative, and this is a combination of minimal footprint, but also placing the structure in the location and connecting to the existing structure that's functionally effective. There are other discussions about possibly going to the north or the east and the south, all of which would complicate and perhaps even be impracticable use of the existing structure and its layout. The proposed parking and vehicle improvements really are limited to what's presently disturbed or used by non-native landscaping. So it's very a tight building envelope. In discussion with Ara and Jim, there's a recognition that to the extent that they can, RCMS will retain or detain runoff from new impervious surfaces, of which there will not be much, if any, except the roof over the existing landscape area. And run those across landscape covered areas in order to attenuate the volume and improve the quality of runoff the site. Mobilization and all construction would occur in the existing paved areas. It's a bit of a trick, particularly given Ara's mentioned that they've got to keep the facility up and running, but we trust you'll do it. Again, the sole change to the existing coastal development use permit is to extend the time frame to resolve what I mentioned earlier to be an awkward split of general plan and zoning designation across the developed area. And this is an artifact of the old coastal development program, and the Walla town plan. Things have changed since then. And so this would essentially align the new coastal program with what's actually happening on the property and will be happening in the future. Next slide, please. So these concerns are probably not going to shock anybody, but we got the referral from the county. I think they sent it to us. Unfortunately, it was kind of off base for our meetings, but as soon as they could send it to us, we got it. But that meant consultation with other agencies was not available to GMAC, and that's just how it's going to go. I am concerned that the scoping study, while very effective as part of a due diligence process, overestimates potential impacts because it's looking at an area well outside the building envelope that's actually proposed. And that's a burden. That's expensive, and it takes a lot of time, and it isn't necessarily relevant for this project. And it ultimately, there are some kind of loose ends that need to be dealt with through the completion of the regulatory process, one being designed for stormwater management. The other one is that at this point, the county planning department hasn't weighed in on exactly the number of parking spaces that don't need RCMS build. So it's all that should get nailed down as part of the update of the permit. I'm going to encourage RCMS not to let those two hanging chads dangle past the approval of that application. Next slide, please. So recommendations. I'm going to stop here. Is there anything you want to add before we kind of come to the bottom line?
No, I'm kind of concerned about that same stormwater runoff management because of the retaining walls that are existing. They're catching water from the hill around the helipad and up the hill to the east of that. And I'm suspecting that retaining wall's got quite a little water in it, but you'll find that out when you do your drawings and find out how much moisture is in there, and then you'll have to figure out where you're going to put that.
Any other?
No, the rest of it all looked very good to me.
Okay. So conclusions to the recommended comments from GMAC. It looks like this proposal aligns with the general plan and local coastal plan and zoning. Seems consistent. It also looks like the least damaging and most practical solution that could be possibly done. Diligence has been very effective, and you guys have you're doing the best you can to deliver the functional lift that's necessary for the community. The studies that were done were competent. They're professionally appropriate. The judgments and conclusions seem to be correct based on, again, what they were, with the sole exception that, again, this environmental scoping study appears to have overestimated potential effects, and so we're going to make a recommendation to that. We're going to defer, we ought to, as a council, given our technical limitations, to county staff for dealing with the specifics of code compliance, as well as determination of actual best management practices. And that really isn't our job, or our, frankly, it's not our skill set. Next slide, please. So recommended comments. Dan and I recommend that council support this proposal with three conditions. One, that the county take a hard look at that scoping report and only apply the measures that are reasonable and effective for the actual project. Don't get distracted with a list of groovy notions that don't apply to this building footprint. That the applicant do follow through on design of stormwater drainage to functionally retain or detain as much as possible, again, as practicable, we know you guys get it, and that's, we're just gonna tell the county, keep an eye on that. And to the extent that you can, if you have to do new coverage for parking, that you explore, pervious surfacing. And that really kind of push the county to tell you how many parking spots you need. And if this is going to be a prompt from GMAC, just to nail that down. It should have frankly been in the referral, but we'll just give them a little nudge to do their job. I'm going to stop here. Any questions?
Okay, any questions or comments from council? Melissa? No? Dan? Henry?
None for me.
Robert?
I read something in the application about the parking spaces, and based upon square footage and on additional providers, I guess, is what we're still wrestling with. So that was my only question, is how many more are maybe needed because of the additional square footage?
Again, we don't know the answer. This is really something that the county needs to pull out its benchmark and decide the number of spaces. My understanding is that it's not about the occupancy, it's not about the number of employees, it's about the potential occupancy space. And at this point, the downstairs of the addition is program for that downstairs is still floating a bit.
Right.
And so that's the part of the building occupancy that might generate additional parking requirement. So we want to encourage both the county and the applicant to nail that down, get it in this entitlement, so that when RCMS, whatever phasing is necessary to build this thing out, they don't have to come back to the county for yet another permit modification, come back to GMAC. Because every time they have to go through that process, it's a chunk of money and it's a lot of time. So we're encouraging everybody to get it done now.
But in general, there's a requirement for one parking space per additional 300 square feet, right?
I don't know what the county standard is for this type of facility.
For this, okay.
And I want the county frankly to do that.
Yeah.
We'd like the county staff to work their numbers, rather than come to the community or come to GMAC to read the zoning code.
And then I saw something else in the application where it showed, and I think it was one of the drawings you showed up there on the screen, how you're gonna punch through the back portion of the existing parking area and gain some more parking there out in the meadow, I guess. So that would be good.
And that would be, pervious.
Okay, that's what we're talking about, pervious, yeah. Okay, that's all I had.
Not.
Yeah, first of all, I think this is a great project. Assuming we'll vote for this. Would like to thank Dave and Dan for doing an excellent job of reviewing the CDP and coming up with all these slides. I do have a question for the applicant, however, a couple minor things, but number one, would you consider putting a bike rack as part of the facility? No, it's not a big deal, but the reason I say that is because, with streetscape, we're gonna have bike lanes. And part of Caltrans' push when they do new projects like this is what they call the active transportation program. So getting people out of their cars more to the extent possible, so they use their physical body to move around, which is actually healthier and less expensive, of course. I know this is a small community, it's not totally ideal for cycling, but we're gonna have bike. And number two, would you consider installing some type of a rain catchment system? And that would be for the landscaping, that you're gonna be doing. And admittedly, during the summer months, we're basically in a drought here. So the idea would be, of course, to reduce the need for fresh treated water, from our water, and by using the rain catchment system.
I think we'll take those two comments under advisement and we'll look into it.
Let me add something to your statement on bicycle. I'm open bicycle. Have you ridden bicycle or walked on the driveway after the county says enter county road? The ambulances and all that are tearing the pavement. There's big chunks of old asphalt. I don't think that's enough recycling. Can GMAC, because I walk that every day with my dog, Yeah. And G. Influence the county to repair the road. After the sun. I know it's private. Wait till the construction. It depends on what kind of bike you have. I've got an electric bike, so I've ridden up there. So so it kind of depends, but at least if you have a bike, bike's not very expensive. You have space for it.
Your name, sir, for the record? Your name, sir, for the record?
HALL. His name is Kelly.
Thank you.
Anything else? I'd like to thank Ari and Jim and your supporters for coming and giving us a really great presentation. And Dave and Dan, thank you for doing your due diligence and really answering a lot of our questions. I think the project is sound. It's definitely well needed in our community. My only question to you is dealing with the stormwater runoff. And your bottom line there says in parking areas practical before offsite release. My question is your offsite release, because a lot of the water that runs off our facilities, off our roadways, goes straight into the ocean. And there's a lot of oil and a lot of other pollutants that are going into our ocean. And I would like, I know that there's another project in the works in our community that we're also trying to address stormwater catch and filtration before it's released to the ocean. And I would hope that you might also take a look at that and see what we can do to reduce the pollutants that are going in our ocean. But I like the idea that you're have vegetation that's going to try and collect as much as possible. But as we've seen the past couple of Januaries and Februaries, there's no vegetation around that's going to hold the amount of water that we've been having running down our streets. So if we could look at something to address that, that would be great. That would be great. Okay, any other comments? If not, we will entertain a motion and second on how we want to proceed with this. Don't all jump up at once.
Do you want me to make a motion?
Absolutely.
So I move that GMAC support the proposal and convey to the county comments and recommendations in these two slides, items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Dan. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Great project.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, CDP 2019-0041. Chester Davis. Dave, was that your?
Yes, that's me and Councilmember Hayward.
Mostly Dave.
Okay, you're up.
Okay. Mr. Davis kindly allowed a visit by Councilmember Hayward and I. It was a very informative walk around the property, an impressive situation there. And similar to the last CDP proposal, I'd like to invite Mr. Davis to make any comments that he'd like to make to the council in advance of my presentation. Okay.
Way too long a process.
Well, thank you for coming this evening. Okay, any public comments online? No. Okay, so seeing no public comments, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion and action.
I took the liberty of preparing a slideshow to facilitate our sharing of information about our site review and the CDP review,
Okay.
and to facilitate the conclusion. The one called David. That's it. Okay. Oh, sorry. I got to ditch. Yeah. Thank you very much. All right, this application is an after the fact for development. Previous construction and other appurtenances for residential development. The county staff emphasized that the present referral is really focused in on the use of yurt structures rather than stick-built typical residential buildings. So that was a distinction that county planner wanted to, again, emphasize for us. The site is on Getchell Gulch Road, which is a steep hillside just south of Anchor Bay. Getchell Gulch Road goes by the Anchor Bay sewage treatment ponds before ascending the west slope of the Coast Range. Next slide, please. So some site details, it's about 6.8 acres. General plan and zoning is for rural residential with 10-acre minimum. This is a non-conforming property, but it's grandfathered in. The site is about 0.2 of a mile east of State Route 1. However, it is completely out of the scenic corridor, and the development on the site is not visible at all from the scenic corridor, State Route 1. Elevation ranges from just under 300 to almost 400 feet above sea level. So it's well up the hillside from the highway elevation. The site is pretty heavily sloped, although all the development that's there and proposed is on a level area, but otherwise it's constrained by fairly steep, moderate to steep slopes. There's one drainage that moves through the property that's a tributary to Getchell Gulch. And the habitat is primarily the Coast Redwood Forest Alliance that's so common here on the west-facing ridge. Next slide, please. We received a CDP referral packet that had typical documentation, a description of kind of parametric description of the project. It also included a study by WRA of environmentally sensitive habitat, most recently done in July of 2022. We also received materials prepared by Francis Driard, who is a civil engineer, used to be a next door neighbor of Mr. Chester's, having to do with groundwater spring yield assessment and draft offsite easement for the spring water source. And we also received a copy from Mr. Davis of his application to the state for fire safe regulations. So this was done back in 2018. Next slide, please. So long story short, the WRA biological resources assessment specifically looked at environmentally sensitive habitat zone, primarily associated with the femoral stream corridor. The development through 2022 did not encroach upon a 50-foot buffer. It's within the 100-foot ideal buffer, but it's not within 50 feet of the stream. And it's well outside of the kind of the hinge point from the relatively level areas down into the kind of the steeply dropping off gulch that encloses that draw, that water body. Measures are recommended in the study to ensure that the project, the existing development and future proposed development comply with existing laws and regulations that are relevant to these types of resources and prevent any further impact on the ESHA there. Mr. Driard determined in his analysis that there is more than sufficient water available from the offsite spring to support a single-family residence in compliance with the county's 1 gallon per minute requirement. Next slide, please. California Department of Fish and Wildlife has commented to the county, the planner relayed to us that CDFW will require a streambed alteration agreement. And the purpose of this is to gain approval of the offsite spring diversion. That spring is it's a water source for the ephemeral drainage. And so State Fish and Wildlife will want to look at that and make sure that that diversion is not affecting the resource values associated with that drainage. Next slide. Oh, and before you go, actually, here you can see some images. It's a little difficult from this distance, of course, but you can see the elevations prepared by Michael Barron Wakey that show what Mr. Davis's development looks like. It's a combination of yurt structures and stick-built structures. The next slide, please. So some field observations. The residential development on the site is quite compact, and it is still within the area where tree cover was likely removed in the past. The development area doesn't seem to extend in any substantial way into or out of that area previously cleared. Also, the development does not appear to encroach any more into the stream ESHA buffer, which is great. It confirms the conclusions of the 2022 study. Based on again a one-time visit, Mr. Davis is engaging in low impact development, and where he can, he's also knocking back Broome and Jubata, although it's the forever job, man. It's that's it. It's a form of physical exercise. You won't have an encounter with the physical gym. There is a construction underway that will connect a newly installed septic tank near the yurt structures to a downslope leach field, which Mr. Davis has mentioned already exists. So we've got work underway. Next slide, please. We determined after looking at the site that there are in fact 3 yurt structures, and Mr. Davis mentioned that he intends to keep all 3 structures along with others that are there. The site plans in the CDP referral, however, don't show the long-term any more than 2 yurt structures. So one way or the other, that
the permit, the square footage is for all the yurts.
Understood. You're gonna have room to talk some more. But the bottom line is there's a discrepancy between what's on site and what is proposed in the referral, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in our recommendations. The domestic water is conveyed overground via a flexible plastic pipe. When I asked Mr. Davis his intentions for that overground pipe, he mentioned that it's working and it's okay with him the way it is. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, whenever we have a discrepancy between what's in field and what's in the permit materials, that's something that catches our attention. Ideally, by the time you finish going through this long adventure, we want to make sure that whatever is approved corresponds exactly to the way you want things to be. And that means there's a little bit more homework to do to make sure everything's lined up properly. We're a little bit concerned that development is continuing in advance of the approved CDP. That's an awkward situation, obviously, and you're kind of dealing with the sharp end of that stick. And one of the other concerns that members of the council have typically when a situation like this is happening is that you may not be getting the benefit of technical inspections. Also, there's an offsite water supply that has been proven in a technically competent way to be adequate to support the residential development. However, it hasn't been perfected. Mr. Davis doesn't actually have ownership of that offsite location.
Next few days.
Super important to continue with that. And as I mentioned in the previous referral, oftentimes timing just doesn't work out for us. We don't get to see all the other agencies' feedback. We don't have the benefit of their technical expertise and their conclusions about an application. And this is the case where a development in the wildfire urban interface is something that this council is regularly concerned with. And we do look to CAL FIRE and the local fire district, in this case, South Coast, to see that they've had a chance to look at what you're doing and say, here's what you got to do, and we're good with it. Next slide, please. Any questions before I go on to recommended comments and conditions?
Any questions or comments from the city? No.
Okay, so I'll just keep moving. Right now, what Mr. Davis has proposed looks like exactly what the local coastal plan has in mind for this type of property in this location. I believe Councilmember Hayward and I both agree that what we saw in the field represents intention for low impact development, and that's great. That's exactly what this council has supported in the past. The technical studies that were done were again credibly and competently executed. The recommendations of those studies and the outcomes appear to be reasonable and practical. We will continue to defer to the expertise of the county when it needs to interpret the application of building and environmental health code compliance, environmental impact, and other best management practice determinations. We're not going to get into that in part of our recommendations. Next slide, please. So Councilmember Hayward and I both recommend that the GMAC support this proposal with the following conditions. One, that the post CDP be updated to include the intended existing and ultimate development, so that again, there's alignment.
Discussion with the Shelley. We've discussed all that already.
Great. That's excellent. And that the county require implementation of recommendations in the biological resources survey as appropriate to the actual development. And so things have changed a little bit over time, and we want to ask the county to kind of true things up as part of the permit review and approval process. We are going to encourage the county to work with the applicant to kind of wrap things up with respect to domestic water supply, as well as fire suppression water supply and wastewater disposal systems before issuing a final certificate of occupancy. And that ultimately we want to encourage Mr. Davis to work with the county to make sure that you've got all your necessary fire protection approvals before a certificate of occupancy is issued. That's the wrap.
Okay. Mr. Davis, do you have any other comments before we bring it back to the council? Okay. Bring it back to the council. Anybody online?
No questions online?
Okay, I bring it back to the council for deliberation. Robert?
What's exactly still needed to perfect the water source? Like, you need an easement from a neighbor?
The new owners, and in the process, Frank, we were spring boxes on the property. In the process of getting easement.
Okay.
But his wife wouldn't get a driver's license, and it needed to be notarized. I drove over the guy to submit it and found they told me, oh, you gotta have this notarized. So the process drug out, and then he sold the property. So I talked to the new owner of the property, and well, he's coming back into town on the 10th, and we'll work out the easement at that point in time, and then
So it needs to be an official agreement.
Official
Can't just
agreement.
be a verbal, okay.
Yeah, well, that verbal okay is what I've gone on for years. but
Okay.
For this, you know,
That's good.
CDP,
So I wanna know.
they want a certificate of,
Easement in writing, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So.
Okay,
that.
if there's no other comments, we'll entertain, council recommendation on action. Someone want to make a motion?
Okay, I wrote it. I'll move that, that GMAC support this CDP referral and proposal. And submit to the county comments as well as recommended conditions of approval as described in the slideshow items 1 through 5.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Don. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Congratulations,
All right.
Mr. Davis. Good luck with your project.
Thank you. You all have a good evening.
You too.
Take care. Thanks again.
Okay, item 7.3 CDP 2024-0001. Robert, was that you and Henry?
Henry and I,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Now, Henry and I, well, we don't have a slide presentation, first of
that's
all.
fine.
Okay, but it involves a vacant piece of land. It's located in coastal zone 36420 South Highway 1, approximately miles south of Anchor Bay or 2 miles south or north of downtown Wallall here. Oceanfront property. It's circa 1.7 acres. Oceanfront, as I said. The property has many constraints to the site. I don't know if you can pull up anything on this. Don,
I'm trying to pull up the CDP.
the best thing we could do is probably show you pages 138 and 139 of
It's
this.
this one here, Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the county website, you could pull it up if that works for you.
What was that address number again?
They're not your.
36420 South Highway 1.
Okay, well, he's
Um,
pulling it
okay.
up.
Don, do you want me to airdrop it to you?
It's probably on the county website.
Oh, okay, I see where it is, across from Collins Landing.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Don, do you want me to airdrop it to you?
The CDP,
Yeah.
well, I could get it from the county website, but I'm trying to just launch it from the agenda, which usually.
No, it's not. I didn't. Did you want link the agenda?
It's on, yeah, I did.
Wow, you're awesome.
I can continue.
Yeah, why don't you continue while he's looking it
But
up?
those are since we do so many things on the screen here, it'd be best for the rest of the council members to see those 2 pages, 138 and 139. Anyway, the constraints of the site, as Henry and I witnessed, primarily wetland, issues, and coastal bluff morning glory. I mean, over half of the property is subjected to that. The most recent updated biological assessment and botanical assessment was done by Weemeyer Ecological Sciences. They're out of Santa Rosa. I believe they did that on December of 23. In that assessment, it talks about 3 project alternatives that were pursued and evaluated. And the architect, the engineers, they decided that alternative number 2 was the best choice because it provided the 100-foot setback to the wetland isha, and it avoided the direct impacts to the all the coastal bluff morning glory ishas. It only impacted one of the 2-point rays, Ceanothus ishas. One of those being for where the septic system has to go on the property. So alternative 2 minimizes the total lot development to 8.8% only. It provides the necessary driveway size and configuration for fire truck access and for a small modest sized home or here a fantastic ocean site. So that project alternative 2 that they chose concentrates the entire proposed development on an area that makes up less than half of the eastern side of the property. The rest of the property, there's no development proposed. Again, it'd be really nice if we could look at the map, but let me read on what okay.
Or are there some drawings or a map on here?
Yeah,
what
page
page?
138, 139.
This is a 400-page
CDP.
CDP, by the way. Or, sorry, I exaggerate. It's only 399 pages.
Well, that's some,
I know.
And then we included one page for the septic system drawing, which shows an engineered plan for a chambered high line system. The septic system is located and designed for a proposed 3-bedroom development. It's set back 100 foot from the wetland Isha, which is on the northeastern side of the property. The septic system will impact that 1-point raised ceanothus shrub. And it has the potential to impact the second one. From a geologic perspective, the report was updated by Brunsing Associates in Santa Rosa, February 9th of 2023. It concludes that the site is geologically and geotechnically suitable for the proposed residence. There's a 37-foot setback from the bluff is recommended for the updated report.
Yeah.
So there's your drawing. That it shows you how tight that is. The driveway coming in off the highway is coming in on an easement on the adjacent property to the south. And then an immediate left-hand turn to the structure, which is roughly it says it here in the CDP, 1,800 square feet. Let me look here. 1,759 square foot single family residence, 2-story, roughly 40 by 40, I guess it is. And then on the other part of the entry driveway there, you'll see a 2-car garage, and they propose to have a 1-bedroom unit above that garage. On the other page,
Robert?
yeah,
Question, real quickly. Where exactly is this on Highway 1?
it's located on Highway 1 across from Collins Landing Road, roughly.
Just south of Collins Landing.
Just south of Collins Landing. It's,
Okay, so it's north of here, which.
Yeah, it's a little south of Anchor Bay. It's by St. Awards. Or yeah, a little north of St. Awards.
just,
In the next map, if you can pull that one up, I think it's the next page, or no, maybe it's a prior page, I'm sorry, that's 138.
That should be the general location.
No, page 138 and 139, 138,
I don't have.
you don't have the pages, okay?
Just
Yeah, it's a long way from here.
It's a color one, it's a color map, Don, so maybe it'll show it. No, it's in the biological report, which would be there, we might be getting to it.
No, it's quite a ways further than that still.
It's still the basic.
But at least here we see
Here you see
pretty
where
much
it
where
is,
it is.
south of Serenity.
Yeah, you're probably still I don't know, 70 pages away or something.
Really.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's voluminous, this application, but they've had to do tremendous amount of work on it.
Yeah.
That might be getting
That's the
closer.
geological study.
Yeah, you're getting close
That's-
though. Keep going. I'll tell you when to slow down.
almost as long as.
No, keep going, keep going. Still a while. Oh, we're getting closer, getting closer.
This is all. part of it.
So while we're waiting.
Okay, I mentioned geological, okay, water is always a big issue, but septic, we talk about water. In February of 22, the applicant initially did 2 extensive separate surveys
Just a few more.
to assess a water supply.
Yeah, sorry, back up. If you go back up there. Is that what you're talking about? Oh,
Yeah, that shows the Isha,
yeah. And there's another one that's actually, if you go down like 3 or 4 more pages, you'll see,
Even better one,
yeah, one that has the site design in color.
there you go. There you go.
Right here, this
That's
is the one.
okay. So back to the water though for a second, the water, if I went up to that. I can show you exactly, well, let me read it here first, what they did. They conducted those two separate surveys to establish a water supply. One technique utilized low frequency waves, scanning available areas and marking 4 targets as possible drilling locations.
But I think we can probably skip through this part, right? Because they're not going to use it anyway. They're going to use.
Right, but I'm getting to that.
Okay.
What was important here, the second testing methodology that they used was a seismic approach. And they used those same 4 target areas and some additional sites, but neither survey produced data including or indicating a viable water source. Ultimately, it was discovered that the property site is listed as one of the 100 properties exempt from the water meter hookup moratorium to North Willow Water Company. So that was a blessing in disguise right there. So they
They had a will serve before 2008.
yeah. So they pursued getting the active water meter installed and they paid the service connection fee in April of 22, but that was after they had gone through those other extensive surveys to search for water. So something was not conveyed there about being on the will serve list. So water meter, the upper corner there of the properties where the water meter was installed. We talked about setback from the bluff edge, 1.7 acres. There was a past coastal development, but that's not really important. The neighbor to the north had tried to do a property line adjustment one time, but that's not important.
Well, we can save that for a little bit, but I looked more into that today and I actually I do have some concerns associated with that.
Okay, chime in, please.
So, so as you said, there's the 37-foot bluff setback, which as far as I can tell from the maps, they have met. And that was a recommended additional setback due to seismic integrity concerns and eventual erosion concerns. But the concern that I do have, so there had been a previous application to move the boundary line between this and the property to the north, which was rejected. Well, first provisionally approved by the county and then rejected by the coastal commission. There was an appeal filed. Coastal Commission found that there were substantial issues, held a de novo hearing and denied the application for the property line adjustment. The reason why they denied it was they said they only approve those property line adjustments if the resulting property can support development, could be approved for development. And they said that the property we're discussing would not be able to be approved for development because of ISHA concerns. So this is the various issues that Robert talked about. And I think of particular concern is the Coastal Bluff Morning Glory.
Keep in mind, these are also, the zoning on this is RR5 and in brackets RR2. So these are already non-conforming sizes as far as the lot size.
Yeah,
they were trying to take a half acre from this 1.7 acre and add it to the northern piece.
Yeah, and
that's why they denied it too. Yeah.
Right, and I'm not concerned about the boundary line. What I'm concerned about is why they rejected it. And as I said, because they said they did not see any buildable site that met the rules surrounding ISHA setbacks. So in that project alternative 2 description, they say the setback buffer to the wetland ISHA is 100 feet from the garage and the septic system. The setback buffers to the Coastal Bluff Morning Glory ISHAs from the home are 32 feet 10 inches and 25 feet 1 inch. The setback buffers to the Coastal Bluff Morning Glory ISHAs from the garage is 7 feet 4 inches and 42 feet 4 inches. And the proposed setback buffers to the Coastal Bluff Morning Glory ISHAs from the hot tub is 27 feet 2 inches. Setback buffer to one of the Point Reyes ISHAs from the septic system is 2 feet 9 inches. Septic system will impact the second Point Reyes ISHAs, and the wood fence along the bluff will avoid encroachment with the Coastal Bluff Morning Glory ISHAs. So that's the alternative they settled on. And it wasn't until I got, again, this is a 400-page CDP, but I dug in a little bit more to that rejection. And what they say is that they didn't see any buildable site because even if so they said the, land use policy, Mendocino County Land Use Policy 3.1-2, says that you should have 100 feet setbacks from any of these issues. That if you can get a biologist assessment that says that there will be less than significant disruption to those habitats, you can get a waiver to get under 100 feet, but that you can't go below 50. That was their rejection. I am not an expert in any of this stuff, but they say very clearly, the development improved by the county does not provide a buffer between the identified building envelope and wetland and some rare plant isha, and isha buffers are not allowed to be reduced to less than 50 feet. And the policy states that in the event that you could get this waiver, it still can't be less than 50 feet in width. So I'm not clear on what has changed, if anything, about this. So that, I had read the proposals, I sort of assumed everything was in the clear, but it wasn't until I read the rejection and then compared that with the selected alternative. I don't understand how this gets through the the coastal commission, and it worries me a little bit that Mendocino County approved this before, and then the coastal commission rejected it. But as they say in their rejection, they were only able to look at it because somebody filed an appeal within, I think it was a 10-day timeframe. It was a pretty short window.
Two of the coastal commissioners filed the actual appeal.
Okay, gotcha.
I remember reading that.
So I don't know. My gloss on this is I think they've made every attempt to limit this development as much as possible and limit the impacts as much as is possible in this highly constrained property. It does seem like they have been relatively modest in their ambitions. But I don't see how it all works. Now, I will say, one thing that was noted in the rejection was that it was a fairly easy rejection for them to make because there was no proposed development associated with it. And therefore it did not get into any kind of a takings issue. And they did not have there was no requirement or pressure on them to approve development because there was no development being requested. It was just the line adjustment. So I don't know if that results in the difference, because I think that now we have a proposed development that is sort of doing everything it can to reduce the imposition on environmentally sensitive habitats. They have a mitigation plan for replanting seeds from the existing Coastal Bluff Morning Glory. They have an area designated for that the biologist thinks will work. They're trying to limit encroachment and they're trying to mitigate the harms. So I don't know if that then changes the burden on the county commission, coastal commission to approve it. But that's having now actually gotten through the whole thing. My hackles are raised.
Right, and what I found interesting was that the old biological and botanical assessment from 07, when they were proposing the boundary line adjustment, how it's a lot different in the updated one in 2023. There seems to be lesser issues.
Really? Okay. I hadn't
in the new
noticed
one,
that discrepancy.
but it's much more detailed than anything. Well, we didn't even have access to the old biological or botanical information, did we? We only saw the current one, which is from last year, 2023. And
yeah, we get some insight.
we're tiptoeing around, making sure we're not stepping on any of these issues, morning glories, and there's runoff coming off of the highway that they talk about. It's very constrained site, and it seems to me like they've tried to do whatever they can. Normally you'd see a proposal on an oceanfront property like this of 3,000, 4,000 square feet, and here they're trying to get an 1,800 square foot home on. So you kind of feel for them in that regard because of all the constraints they have, but
and they're really shoving everything into this small section of the property as well.
Yeah. And trying to keep the setback. So The mitigation we're talking about, that was in section 9.3, where they talked about, replanting the unimproved part of the property with, that ceanothus that they're going to be disturbing through the septic system, and then, trying to use all the seedlings that you were talking about, Henry,
Mhm.
to, replenish the coastal morning glory, the bluff coastal morning glory that they, feel that they might have to take some away. There's also all the trees that they're gonna take, right? There was quite a few
Yeah.
trees, but that's mostly in the area we found, or we thought we noticed, where the garage unit's gonna be.
Yeah, so it's they listed 1 fir, 2 redwood, 5 eucalyptus, 7 cypress, and 8 pine. And this also, the biologist goes into some detail about potential impacts to, I think, was not particularly concerned about impacts to birds, but a little bit more concerned with bats and, what was that?
Voles.
Didn't talk about voles though. Talked a little bit about bees, but the more major concerns were bats, seemed the biggest one, and monarch butterflies, potentially. That was very hypothetical in both cases. And had recommended mitigations to verify that it would not in fact be impacting those species.
Yeah, the free-tailed bats, Mexican free-tailed bats like the bark and eucalyptus, just pulls away from the trunk. They can get down.
Yeah. Yes, the mitigations were very specific about,
So it's a tough one to recommend on.
yeah.
Did you guys have a sense of how visible it would be from the highway? Because this is scenic corridor and these are tall buildings, so they're getting their square footage vertically rather than.
Yeah, they're 28 feet, I think is the height limit there.
Yeah.
They do sit down a ways from the highway.
And it's hard to know, I mean, there's pretty good tree cover in between the building site and the highway. I think even after you pull out the trees they're talking about pulling out, it is a little harder to be sure, because a bunch of the trees that would block it are, we think, designated for removal.
Yeah.
But there were still quite a few up towards the highway. I don't think it would impact the view corridor, but it's hard to say for
Well,
certain.
based on your sense of the site, there's still there'll be a remnant tree cover along the site. People are going by at 55 miles an
Yeah.
hour, or they're riding a bike, they're not walking there, so your sense is probably not it's no harm, no foul.
That's
from a scenic standpoint.
Yeah, and then there is one potential piece of this. So they listed, yes, they are visible from the highway. No, they're not visible from any beaches or parks. That's maybe a little bit up for debate. It's pretty far from Cook's Beach, but down at one end of the property, you can see Cook's Beach. It's hard to know exactly where the hot tub is supposed to be, whether that would potentially be in view, but the house wouldn't be.
It's a significant distance.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I don't know what the rules are for how far it has to be. Anyway, that did not seem like an area of concern to me.
With that hot tub location, they're trying to get out there a little bit further to the west so that they can get that view, I'm sure, of Cook's Beach.
Well, maybe of Cook's Beach, not.
Yeah.
It would be the far end of Cook's Beach. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not gonna
southern
bother
end
me.
of Cook's Beach. If you've been in the very southern end, not many people walk down that far, but
Seems like kind of a stretch.
that's what
Yeah.
they're trying to do by having that little
Yeah.
outdoor pad and that walking area to the hot tub.
So kind of long story short, then this proposal involves encroachments under 50 feet, under that kind of that zero threshold at the county, so it's as close as 6 or 7 feet,
Yeah.
and then a number of outright removals.
Yep.
And then the biological resources report, what are the conclusions in that report about the net environmental impact if mitigation is fully implemented?
So they go through many different sections.
Of course, they're gonna
There
go
isn't like
resource by
yeah, there
resource.
isn't a summary one.
Is it your sense, though, if the applicant, county requires the applicant to implement all of those measures, that does the report say something to the effect of, if all these measures are implemented, avoidance,
It does.
minimization, compensation, that the net effect after all this stuff is done is no significant impact?
Right.
Well,
Let me-
less
let
than
me, let me just read it. Section
Less than
9.3 recommended protection and mitigation measures. The following measures are proposed to reduce impacts to a less than significant level to special status plants and animals as a result of the development of the proposed project. So that's kind of the verbiage they use there.
Yeah.
At the end.
You know, the tough point for us, at least the way I look at the laws that we're in charge with dealing with, is we really don't have the authority to waive that buffer requirement. We don't. In fact, that's something that's kind of that's a brick wall. But we can observe that the assessment, the technical assessment, says the net result will be a less than significant impact
Right.
if they do all their business correctly.
Mhm.
And the hope is, of course, that after all this intent, that they would follow through. But we really, it's a dilemma. It's a dilemma about the buffer zones, because those are so unforgiving.
Well, hang on, let's go around, because
Yeah, we gotta go.
I'd like everybody to weigh in on it. Melissa?
Did I not hear that the hot tub is 2 feet 7 inches from an Asia?
Sorry, let me find that again. They said no, that was from the hot tub is 27 feet 2 inches was one of them. Sorry, so there was
I think the garage is.
oh, sorry, that's right. Excuse me. There was the nearest one was the septic, and it was setback buffer to one of the Point Reyes issues was 2 feet 9 inches.
That is not 50 feet.
That is rather substantially less. I would agree with that. Yeah, and the Coastal Bluff Morning Glory issue to the garage is 7 feet. Yeah.
They're gonna have to make it even smaller footprint.
Yeah.
Well, so
My house could go there.
I'll give, I mean, I'll give one more summary piece from the initial rejection was, even if reduced buffers around each of the issues had been justified consistent with land use policy 3.7 and which they at the time had not, there does not appear to be sufficient room on proposed parcel 2 to accommodate a building site for a future home and associated necessary development such as an access road, septic system, parking, and utilities. That was the Coastal Commission's view in, what was that, 2009?
For boundary line.
Yeah, had
Yeah.
that property been reduced by another half acre, right?
Right. Oh, sorry. 2010.
Right.
Okay,
So-
Dan?
My question is, how did this get to us? Given the Coastal Commission's position on it, how did it get past the county to get to GMAC to begin with?
Well, you're talking about two different things there, Dan. It was back in 10 or whatever that year was, there were the neighbor to the north who owned both pieces. He had a house already existing on the northern piece, and he bought this 1.7 acre piece. He wanted more land to have more of a buffer to his house. That was denied by the Coastal Commission after it went through an appeal of the county ruling, like Henry was saying. But now they're coming back, this new owner of this 1.7 acres, and they're trying to actually develop it.
Yeah.
And they're going through a lot of hoops to try to do what they can do there. Septic system restraints, they luckily found out about that they could be part of the water system. Otherwise they would have had to still drill a well or try to do all that, and you're never gonna make it then.
No.
100-foot separation between septic and water, and the two surveys that they didn't find any water. So, I guess you could have them reduce the footprint even more. This is can be appealed to the coastal commission again, by the way.
So to answer your question, we don't know how we got it.
Yeah.
It's
They filed an
It came
application.
here, they got here, what I say, it came in through the back door.
they did all their homework and they filed a coastal development
Yeah.
permit application.
Yeah.
They have a right to file.
Yeah. Don?
Well, it seems like a potentially problematical development, given the extremely minimal setbacks from these issues. And the question I have also is, where is the applicant or the architect for this project? I'm kind of surprised that, nobody's here defending, the project.
They may not have gotten an invitation.
Yeah, I guess that's probably on us. We probably should have invited them as part of our investigation of this CDP.
Just notify them when it's coming before.
Did you have any
Yeah.
contact at all?
I
No,
did.
we didn't. I saw the address, the person lives up in Nevada, Zephyr Cove, I believe. So, yeah, we used to, always write out, send out a letter and invite them if they wanted to come to us.
That would be the courtesy thing, or at least a
Yeah,
phone call.
we didn't.
So that's all.
Yeah,
We
that's
could
on us.
Start doing that in the future. But, I don't know what solution is here. Maybe, how about if they try to combine the parking with the same structure, the living structure, built-in garage. And so you wouldn't even need the parking right there, more so than a couple of feet from that. I don't know, we don't necessarily have a solution here, but to me, it's complicated.
I was gonna make a similar suggestion, a little bit more joking. I was gonna say they thought about not having a garage or a house, pick one. But yeah. That might be nice to have the area with the 2-level structure with the garage attached to it, but they don't want that.
Okay, so-
Maybe I can make a suggestion. Oh,
Melissa? Exactly. That's where I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to weigh in, and if anyone wants to make a recommendation or a motion to either approve or not approve this, I would entertain that. Henry?
I don't necessarily have this formed as a formal motion yet, but I just essentially, council, I wonder if it makes sense for us to punt this till next month. Robert or I or both could follow up with the applicants and discuss with them, would have been better if we'd invited them to this, but discuss with them, see if they have any responses to that particular concern, any reason why they think this would get through the coastal commission. And then we can bring back that response, invite them to talk to us if they want, otherwise we can just pick it up here next month.
Exactly what I was gonna suggest, table it, and then we can invite them to a Zoom meeting next month.
Yeah, well, we should try to talk to them beforehand, I think.
Yeah.
Just,
And follow.
yeah, let them know what's going on.
Dave?
If we do provide more time, could you guys reach out and talk with the planner as well?
As well, yeah.
I think we'd all benefit from the county's perspective, where they're inclined and
Yeah.
how the county would view issues that we're finding, that we're kind of struggling with from a regulatory standpoint.
Sandy Arellano, have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so
So
we
no
will,
action.
table this, and Robert or Henry, will you reach out to the applicant?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
And definitely, if we're gonna have it at our June meeting, invite them, if we're prepared for it.
And, sorry, mind if I add one thing to that? Oh, I just think, that this is totally an oversight on our part, but maybe we should just have it be sort of formal recommended policy that whoever's actually reviewing the application, reach out to the applicant to invite them.
Yeah.
Others probably are already doing that, but
No, I
I
think
did not have that in my head.
that's a good practice, and I remember that when I first joined.
Yeah, well, I think Mary used to do that,
Yeah.
if it was on the agenda, but I think it might as well be whoever's actually doing the review. So,
So, and to that point, I think that's an excellent idea. I think it's really important for council members to attempt to be able to report out contact with the applicant,
Mhm.
as well as the planning department or any other agency as part of the due diligence. If you want, though, since I'm sending out stuff as part of the notification process, if you were to prompt me, I can also furnish a copy of the agenda
That's a good
to the
idea.
applicants. And so it's coming from the secretary. Not that that's any big deal, but you guys could also do it, but if you
No, it's
again
great.
prompt me, I'm happy to do that.
great,
Okay.
thank you.
I'm gonna backtrack a little on 7.1 and 7.2. Dave, are you gonna draft the letter? to the
Yes.
county?
Yes,
Um,
further direction.
7.4. Daniel McGrath and, is that right? Dong Dong Ding?
It is right.
Okay.
Careful, you're on the record.
The recommended action is to sign GMAC council to review the project and report back. Do we have anybody that wants to do? And we don't have an address for that, but I'm sure.
It's at 37891 Old Coast Highway. So if you turn off on the Old Coast Highway, turning west, turn left immediately. It's that vacant lot at the corner, in that corner, where there's people who are presently camping.
Okay.
It's a tough spot.
Are there any council members that would like to volunteer to take on the McGrath Dong Dong thing?
Sure, I'll take it on.
Robert? Is there anyone else that would like to meet with Robert? Okay, I'll go and put my name down. I'll join Robert with that.
Okay.
CDP. Okay, CDP 2023-0041. One that we added. And what's the address on that one?
38660 Coral Court. This is a site with an existing structure.
Do we have anybody volunteering to take on that one? So,
What was the name of the street?
Coral Court, right here in town. Chairman, I would volunteer, but I have to beg your indulgence. I have a complicated month with family medical issues, so I'm sorry I have to withdraw from CDP reviews this month.
okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I have a similarly complicated month, but, and for similar reasons, but, in the early portion, I could put a little time into this.
Okay.
So I don't know. Obviously, we don't really have anything in front of us. Anybody have a sense of whether this looks like a big one?
There's some complexity. Fortunately, it's close by. You could, I mean, if you need to do, you could do field review from the street.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't have a sense that the application's as big as chewy as the last one you did.
That's
Sorry.
good.
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
It's kind of in your neighborhood.
yeah, yeah, all right.
Sorry to jump on.
Yeah, I can take it.
Okay, anyone want to join? Hearing crickets, Henry, I'll go ahead and join you.
All right, thank you much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, on old business, the Walla Municipal Advisory Council bylaws update. County Council completed review of the draft bylaws on 2/1/24 update and transmitted refinements and explanatory comments. All of you should have received that and they have been posted, right, Don?
Yes, they have.
Okay.
Yeah.
The GMAC secretary distributed county council comments and 2 alternative final draft bylaws that contain all of the county council refinements and enable GMAC to choose a voting standard for future bylaw updates. The recommendation is to discuss the final alternative draft bylaws, adopt one of the alternative of the final 2024 bylaws. Direct the secretary to transmit the adopted bylaws, update the county council and our supervisor. And there is an update on that, that they will forward our bylaws to the board of supervisors for review and approval. Melissa,
I have a few moments.
what was that?
May I have a few moments?
Oh, absolutely.
Damn, the floor is getting further and further away from standing up. Sure.
Oh. Writing assignment. Okay. While you're writing that, you want to,
I'm gonna be talking with it.
okay,
Democracy equals vote. How votes. Yep. I have a degree in political science.
that's,
Okay.
I'm not.
Regarding it. %. That's the majority. The super majority.
Want another pen?
One of my five better. Y'all can read it.
In case no one moves out.
I mean. Majority. Vote. Or. Two. 3/4. Quarters. 75%. Okay. These are both enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. U.S. Constitutional Amendment.
Unless you do wanna, you're speaking against their.
Yeah, we're not getting a recording.
So you might wanna hold.
I can hold this, you can put that there. U.S. Constitutional Amendment makes a 2/3 vote from the House and the Senate. Democratic 3/4 vote is also in the U.S. Constitution because it takes 3/4 of the states for their legislation to pass the amendment. Both of these are democratic. Both of these are enshrined in the democracy. Anyone who says that either one of them is undemocratic is stating a deliberate untruth or a lie. Don had it right. Rousseau advocated, the great political philosopher, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, advocated supermajority voting on important decisions when he said, the more the deliberations are important and serious, the more the opinion that carries should approach unanimity. Changes to Constitution, especially those with entrenched clauses, commonly require supermajority support in a legislature and also in a deliberative body, which is why we have had a requirement for a 2/3 vote to change our bylaws since the beginning. And I repeat, according to Robert's Rules of Order, 2/3 vote is the most common way to change the bylaws of any deliberative body.
Okay.
So it is insulting to this council to state that 2/3 vote is unconstitutional, is undemocratic, because it's entirely democratic and is enshrined in the Constitution.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa. Dan, do you have any comments? Well, before you do, Dan, let me, thank you, Melissa, for that illustration. All of you got the revised comments from county council. You will notice that it is not only regarding our vote, there are other red line areas on that as well. So I don't want to get bogged down in just the one section. We're looking at a lot that they've redlined out. I would have hoped that everybody would have taken a look at those amendments from county council. And be prepared to discuss that this evening. Dan?
I'll pass for now.
Okay, Henry?
Should we maybe take these one by one in order, the sections that are modified from our previous discussions? Or do you want to focus on 2/3 since we've already opened that conversation?
I think we, in order for us to really approve a full document, we probably have to make sure that we're all comfortable with all of the changes.
Yeah.
And not focus on just a 2/3 majority.
Yeah.
Dave or Henry, I know that you guys were part of the committee. Do you want to discuss or at least share with the council what the recommended changes were from county council?
Yeah, I believe I am the sole surviving member of the committee. I'm happy to lead this discussion if you'd like.
Okay, go for it.
So the first change is to 5.11, which Don has up on the screen. That's the remote participation at meetings, formerly electronic attendance at meetings. So basically they slimmed it down a little bit, I think, to sort of reduce any objectionable footprint. I liked what we had. I don't like what they have as much, but I don't have any strong objection. I missed the last line that gets cut, where we said, to the extent allowed by statute, we welcome remote participation by the public. Those are for the council and as needed members of the council. I thought I liked that expressed that we would like to do this. I understand why they want to cut it. I don't think it's worth fighting over personally. That's my gloss on it. I wish they'd left it. They didn't. I don't really feel like going around and around with them over it. Anybody want to discuss 5.11?
Why don't we go through all of them, and then if anybody has any questions, we can return back to whatever section they would like to know.
Sure. For committees, they made some modifications to, this is 5.13, made some modifications to our discussion of ad hoc committees. I think this is mostly an improvement. They specify limited purpose, limited duration, They suggested removing the single member ad hoc committee because that's just likely to get us into trouble. I think that is a great call out and exactly the kind of thing we were hoping county council would protect us on. So I think that's a great change. And then it says the last line that was added was ad hoc committees are encouraged to conclude their business at the end of each calendar year, but may be extended at the recommendation of the committee and approval of the council. I think that's an excellent addition.
Okay.
Then 702 is the procedure on amendment, or sorry, 701 is amendment of bylaws. They went back to their original chain of affirmative majority vote of the council members. Although I will point out in their response as relayed by Dave, it's they feel like this is up to us, whether to do majority or 2/3. Specifically said, I'm not aware of any law or code or policy that requires a 2/3 majority vote to amend your bylaws. So you could change this to a majority vote if you would like. So I think they're pretty clearly not taking a stance on 2/3 or majority. And then they did add in 702 procedure. They added council bylaws shall be subject. They changed it to subject to, instead of subject to Mendocino County review and concurrence, they specified review and concurrence by the board of supervisors.
Okay.
Anybody?
Well, let's go, let's do this. We'll start from my right, because Melissa already weighed in. Robert, is there any discussion on this?
Yeah, 5.11 was the first one, right? I had a question on remote participation by applicants, such as the last CDP we handled. It says to the extent allowed by statute. So by statute, it would be allowed for a applicant to participate in a meeting. Is that not correct? Okay, just wanted to verify that.
Well, that
was cut out.
As a matter, I think it's our discretion, because it doesn't necessarily, they don't have to be here for the public, but we do. And if they're in Florida or somewhere else back east, I think out of courtesy and out of processes, that's, and I know the board of supervisors does allow audio presentations as well, so.
Yeah, that's a must, in my opinion. Yeah, okay,
So anyway,
this doesn't preclude that from happening. Okay.
no,
I liked all the verbiage there with regards to the ad hoc committees, things we've talked about in the past, where it was brought up that you renew the ad hoc committee and standing committee issues at the end of the year, or was it just the one ad hoc?
I think that hoc we review it, where we.
At the end of each year, yeah.
At the beginning of the next term.
So that second paragraph there, I did see that. And that's, well, I still feel how I do about 2/3, but that's my only comments.
Okay, Zach?
Yeah, I really don't have much to add. It really does seem like the county's, letting us deliberate about the 2/3, but yeah, I don't really have any add-ons.
Okay, Don?
Well, I think we pretty much have to accept all the modifications made by the county council, and I really don't have a problem with that. I think what we were trying to do in 511 is sort of cover our bases by saying that we're going to do the best we can, in so many words, to provide the Zoom, connection capability, but it's not a promise. And so at this point, it really just relies on the 3 words may be supported.
Right.
I guess that's going to do the work there. So that does mean it could be supported, but it might not be supported. We have a technical problem. It's not gonna be. Yeah, right.
And that you don't go sideways with the technical problem. Yeah. If there's a technical problem, but there's no conflict with the amended.
And, on the requirement for amending the bylaws, I still feel that, it should be consensual to the extent possible. In which case, my tendency is to support a 2/3 vote on that. Just because of the desire, in my mind, that it's better to have consensus on that, as opposed to just a simple majority. That's all.
Okay, Dave?
I concur with county council's changes. I appreciate their perspective. I also am grateful that county council gave us an explanation to help us understand what was motivating the adjustments. I really appreciate the time they put in. And I continue with my position that a simple majority is adequate and preferable for any type of action by this body, given that our authority is limited, frankly, to providing a venue for people to have a conversation and for rendering the results of those conversations as advice to our county board of supervisors.
Okay, Henry?
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll say just on 5 and 11 is I think this has been trimmed to really only talk about participation by council members and not talk at all about participation by the public. And that's the part that irks me, is I think we were trying to prod ourselves to say, we'll do what we can to support public participation. And I thought that was useful. Again, I understand council doesn't want us to box ourselves in, which we were kind of trying to do a little bit. I get it. I'm not going to belabor it any further. And then, we've had many back and forths about majority and 2/3. I'll reiterate my support for 2/3 and leave it at that.
Okay, Dan?
As far as the attendance of the committees, I think the ad hoc committee is by definition temporary.
Yeah.
And they tend to get carried. And I think it's a really good idea to clean house at least once a year. That's how we practice it. Whether it needs it or not. And we should be doing the same thing here. We get deadwood and then we end up tying up committees, tying up meetings, waiting for committees to report on something. On the majority thing. Irritated at Bronco yesterday. Aspirated. I'm in favor of majority rule, simple majority. This isn't the Constitution of the United States. It's just the municipal advisory council or advisory, like David says, and sometimes we get listened to and sometimes we don't. It's kind of the way things are in advisory councils. I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep over it if it goes the other way, but I prefer it to be a simple majority because it gives us a slight bit of flexibility. I don't see that bylaw modifications are going to come up very often once we get county council's blessing on it.
Okay, Melissa, you have anything more to add?
Well, I think about the thing about the ad hoc committees is a very good idea because the International Screw Thread Committee was formed during World War II because they were making parts for war material all over the planet and they had to have screw thread size that was being made everywhere. That committee is still drawing money 40 years later. So yes, there comes a time when a committee needs to be dissolved and having deciding at the end of the year, do we want this? Yeah, no, okay, yes, okay, no. Sounds like a good plan.
Okay,
And I still say that the report 2/3.
Okay, I'm gonna close with my comments, and I'm hoping we will do some action on this. 'Cause I'm tired of kicking the can down the road. My position, and I've, like everybody, have been waiting on this for, you know, months now. To where I'm even having the public coming up to me, asking me what we're doing and why are we deadlocked on this one item, and someone even told me that the Coast Life Support, they just updated their bylaws and it took all of 15 minutes. So I'm kind of torn on this. But my position, I think I stated at the last meeting, I'm gonna hold to it tonight, that I believe that whatever the county council submitted to us is the document that I'm going to support. There was nothing compelling from county council to support either a 2/3 or a simple majority. So I'm going to support the document as submitted.
Wait, sorry, what do you mean by the document as
The
submitted?
document as submitted to us this evening.
Well, that we have two things. We have two documents. We have two alternatives. We have one with 2/3 and one with simple majority.
For fidelity's sake, alternative one, as I described in my communication with council members, is exactly what we got from county council. The only change was that I added headers to identify it as alternative one. Alternative two, the only change there was as directed by this council to make sure that there would be an option to implement the 2/3 majority vote in section 701 as a voting alternative. So again, draft one represents verbatim commentary from county council.
And county council recommendation for item 7.1 was what?
That's not,
That's not how I understood it.
that's not what they said. What they said was that either one is okay, which is exactly what I read to you from Robert's Rules of Order. If it's not already entrenched
Okay.
in the bylaws.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. Okay. We will entertain a motion as to which direct. We have two options. We have option one, if I'm not mistaken, which is 2/3. Am I correct?
Option one is simple majority. in
Simple
section-
majority, and option two is 2/3.
Correct.
So, I will entertain a motion to, accept either one of those options.
I make a motion that we vote on option B.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second,
I'd like to call it the right thing. Can we make a motion to final draft alternative 2 is how I would,
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we take a vote to finalize option 2, which includes what was already, the 2/3 majority vote, which is what is already in
Okay,
the previous.
we got it. Do we have a second?
second,
Got a second by Henry. We're gonna take a roll call vote. David, would you conduct the vote?
Of course, just a moment, second by Mayor. Okay, Councilmember Finley. Councilmember Lewis,
No,
Councilmember Mayor,
aye.
since I'm next in order, I will vote nay. Councilmember Hess.
Aye.
Councilmember Evans,
I'll go last.
very well. Sorry, Zach. You're out of vote tonight. Councilmember,
I,
Chairman Evans,
I'll vote aye.
motion carries.
Okay.
Second, though, on the direction, I just want to to confirm that I'm directed then to transmit the vote of this council to approve alternative 2 to Supervisor Williams and County Council with request for review and concurrence by the board. Is that correct?
Correct. And those that voted no do have, as part of the submittal, do have the option of responding why they voted no. And when do you plan on sending this? Because I want to give the people that voted no an opportunity to share their reasons why.
Ideally, it would be tomorrow morning before 9 o'clock. However, and that's really crucial for the CDP items because they're already behind 8 ball in time. However, I think the bylaws is less time sensitive. And so when can you give me some commentary if you wish?
Tomorrow, probably.
Tomorrow? Okay. Any particular time?
No.
Right.
And I would suspect that this will probably, because county council has a very busy plate, it will not be showing up on this board of supervisor meeting, but may show up on the second one in May.
Yeah. Why don't we give ourselves a target? Why don't you get in touch with or send me whatever you like? By Wednesday.
I'll get it to you tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, we're quickly,
Sorry, quick point of order. I assume we're operating under current bylaws.
Correct.
Up until the board gets.
correct.
Great.
Okay, item 9.1. Mendocino County Local Road Safety Action Plan update, Dave.
Okay.
Do we have time for it?
I'm going to be really brief since.
Okay.
Okay.
We only have
This,
15 minutes.
we're gonna go really fast on this one. So in the agenda, there's plenty of information for background. And there's a link to a website that's pretty nicely rendered. And a crucial kind of time-sensitive aspect of this is that you look at the venues across the top. Sorry, Don. You got me all warmed up while you're getting it set up. Let me back up a little bit. This local road safety action plan update is driven by changes in federal law related to the Infrastructure Financing Act that add some new criteria for federal grant funding for road safety improvements. The previous local road safety action plan done only a couple of years ago, so this probably looks very familiar to you guys, didn't have those criteria in because, well, we got to chase the funding environment that we're in. This is I won't call it a quickie update because there's a good amount of input that's being solicited, but it is a relatively rapid turnaround to again pick up community input, stakeholder input, update for new criteria, and bring in new information from CHP and local law enforcement record keeping about collisions. All of which too, ideally position the county in a competitive place for this federal money. That's kind of that's the overview. The process that is being implemented by MCOG is that a consultant's been retained. You can see their work here, TJKM, an excellent consulting firm. Stakeholder meeting 1 was done. You've had a report of that in correspondence. There was a public meeting on the 25th of April. There will be more public meetings. All that is discussed here on the website and flyers that I've furnished to you all. I encourage you to share that information with others. And so without getting into the timing, there's several opportunities coming up in this month. Sadly, I will not be able to participate, so I'm hoping that you all can. However, there is a reporting concern feature on the website here with this photograph of pedestrian crossing at the Walla Community Center. This is a tool, it's a map-based tool, it's very accessible, it's easy to use. It allows a person to pick either by point or drawing a line, a location where one has a concern about safety, whether it's motorist safety or bicyclist safety or pedestrian safety or a combination of all those things, or even transit safety, to provide that comment to the team. This is the only use of this particular tool. It is going to generate obviously subjective information that sometimes in some ways will be a counterpoint, but ultimately complement objective information that's derived from police reports and CHP reports, which tend to underreport safety issues. They underreport collisions, they underreport events. So this is our opportunity to get involved. MCOG graciously extended the deadline to tomorrow. They previously wanted to shut it down on the 30th, but I asked for another day to allow GMAC and the public here at GMAC to interact with this project. I'm going to stop. Any questions? Anybody have any questions?
Real quick, the one project we went to just north of Marigas, that's a safety concern that's getting taken care of by Caltrans.
Correct. The curves,
Those are-
below the curve project, and that is underway.
Those are good safety issues. I mean, we've got the streetscape that's happening. There was one other item that has always come up in the past, but it was out of GMAC jurisdiction, and then I just wondered how to address that. But it's that area where Schooner Gulch is Bowling Ball Beach. That was always a safety concern, so maybe I should attend one of these
Use
meetings,
the map.
bring it up, yeah.
You can do that. You can do that, but I think for the purpose of time, we have this moment to get lodged, for comments to be lodged into this tool. So Robert, I encourage you. if
Get
you have
online.
the time,
Okay.
please go to this website and
Will.
use that tool that you just saw. There's a button there. It's pretty
Okay.
easy to use.
Good. That's what I wanted to know.
And to your question, that's exactly the kind of stuff, as I interpret this, where we have an opportunity to lodge an observation of a safety problem. I did observe that problem, Robert, but I think it makes sense for those comments to be made as repetitive as necessary.
Whether they're in our jurisdiction or not. Okay,
There's not a, no,
Okay.
because we all live in the county.
right.
So you might know of a safety problem outside of Ukiah. Now's the time to lodge an objective observation, a subjective observation into the system. And I've been assured that that input would be considered by the team.
So can I get a clarification on this? Anybody who's responding to this is responding as a citizen and not as a member of GMAC?
Correct. Unless GMAC decides to do something on GMAC's behalf, this tool registers a participant by their email address.
Because we would need to agendize that if we were taking action.
You would, and my hope was simply to tell you all about it and the public who's attending and encourage you to use this tool, use the tool. And then also look at the upcoming meetings, and if you can, please do participate. There are a couple there's one on the 20th in Fort Bragg, on the 21st in Ukiah. These are in-person meetings. They'll cover material that I previously sent to you, part of the stakeholder one meeting. And then there's a virtual meeting a little bit later, and I've lost the date. Sorry. about that.
Sorry, never mind.
That's okay. Virtual meeting number one, but again, the materials are there and you have it.
May 23rd.
Thank you so much. There will be subsequent stakeholder meetings. I will attend them and I will report out to you guys. Okay? Thank you.
Any
No.
questions? Council? Okay. Item 9.2, this just came up, last Thursday. Jared Huffman's office contacted me. Their fiscal year 2025 community project funding eligibility account project is in place. The application was due yesterday. No, the application was due Tuesday, the 30th. But what, as part of the requirements, they're asking for public support and endorsement of the project as part of the submittal. So with Dave's help, we have a resolution before you tonight. It's time sensitive, so it will be one and done. Either we'll approve it tonight or we won't, but I won't have a second chance on this item. So, but this is for the funding for the Valhalla Community Center.
Okay, how does the resolution read?
Says resolution of the Wallala Municipal Advisory Council supporting the Congressional Fiscal Year 2025 Community Project Funding Program application for the Wallala Community Center rebuilding project. Whereas the United States Congress is providing funding opportunities for local projects through the fiscal year 2025 Community Project Funding Program. And whereas the community of Wallala, located on the south coast of Mendocino County, experienced a catastrophic loss when an arsonist destroyed the Wallala Community Center on February 13th, 2023. And whereas the community center, built by volunteers in 1954, has provided a valuable service to residents and visitors to the area for over 70 years. And whereas the facility has provided a venue for public and private events, bringing families together and creating a feeling of community. And whereas the center has provided a home for pancake, senior services, nonprofit clubs to bring the public together through theme events and services. And whereas the facility has supported governmental meetings, a polling location, and served as a cooling center during prolonged power outages and emergency events. And whereas a collaboration of resources, public input, and a community survey has provided the impetus to build the community center. Now therefore it be resolved that the Wallala Municipal Advisory Council supports the Wallala Community Center application for fiscal year 2025 project funding program. And be it resolved that the Wallala Municipal Advisory Council acknowledges and appreciates the efforts of the Wallala Community Center Board of Directors for their oversight of rebuilding the Wallala Community Center. And be it further resolved that the Wallala Municipal Advisory Council encourages and appreciates support for the Wallala Community Center application for the fiscal year 2025 Community Project Funding Program from U.S. Congressman Jared Huffman. Signed this date.
Okay. You want a motion?
So, do we have a motion on this?
I move that.
You move
I
that.
move the motion as just read by Chairman Evans.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Henry, second by Robert. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And as a point of disclosure, because I was the one that wrote the application, I have no financial gain from this. This is all part of volunteer for the Wallala Community Center. So that's on record in case anybody questions.
Sign it. And hand it to me.
Here, I'll use that as my pen screen. Okay, because we're 5 minutes away, do we want to dispel with any committee reports? Are there any committee reports that are urgent for tonight?
No, I mean, we've got relevant stuff from that Bower Park meeting, but we don't need to read tonight.
Yeah.
Really quickly, local coastal program update. The county has launched the technical studies. One of the technical studies is a groundwater study, and the county is soliciting input, groundwater well monitoring input from people who've got wells. This is somewhat time sensitive. There's a period of time, well, during a 1 year period. So those of you who have your water supplied by well, interested in participating in this, I think, very worthwhile endeavor, get in touch. I have some information here. I'll hand it to you. Otherwise, go to the county website. Please do participate in that if you're willing. Another detail. Public member of the public at the last meeting asked about the fate of the State Route 1 repair between Stalia Drive and Pacific Drive, whether it would have any pedestrian access.
Yeah, we saw that. It looks great.
Yeah.
Caltrans has done a really great job. It's a really tight project.
Yeah.
That's great. One last thing, please indulge me. Our scheduled meeting in July is on the 4th. It happens to be the Independence Day holiday. And so I wanted to check in with you all to find out if you want to do this on Independence Day.
I do not.
Then can I make a suggestion? do we just cancel our July meeting?
As long as we don't have any pending project business, that's the only thing that I would be.
Then let's wait and see what's on our plate. But I would suggest that there's nothing pressing, that we just rather than move it to the second or third Tuesday, let's do.
Vacation.
Yeah, you guys will get a vacation.
This is an
I
action item.
have,
Yeah, I'll put it on the agenda. for
Perfect.
you, as
Okay.
An action item for cancellation.
and I have one other item from the county, you may have seen it, may not. The coastal commission has directed the county to rescind their tree policy. Where the county said that you could take out your trees that were hazardous and diseased and dead without the coastal commission review. The coastal commission directed the county to rescind that directive, so. All these trees that were taken down.
Put them back.
Your timing couldn't have been any better, but yeah. That policy has been. Henry?
Sorry, just one thing on Bower Park that is time sensitive. I think we make sure if anybody is still listening, that people know they are gonna close the park for tree work for up to 60 days, pretty much
Right.
at the beginning of June, very early June. So we're gonna lose Bower Park for the summer,
But we're gonna
the
gain,
entire park.
yeah, but we're gonna gain it.
Yeah, I mean, good things are gonna come from it. The
But
timing
put up
is,
Signs.
the timing's miserable.
Yeah, they'll post it in.
Yeah.
Under, oh, sorry, you're done on that one?
Yeah, just wanted to tell people.
Got a quick one. Go ahead. Economic development. I got a note back from Raymond Jimenez that they're not gonna participate in the commitment that Sonoma County gave on the visitor center, so I'll pursue some other avenue, try to, or whatever.
Okay,
Okay, so there.
thank you for that update. Melissa,
I make a motion to adjourn.
thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Don, all in favor?
Aye.
Sure, go ahead and shut that off. Yeah.